Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
So people ask me all the time about all the things that I do in my life, right? So Steve, how did you lose all that weight? Hey man, how do you get all that stuff that you do done in a day's time? Where do you come up with all that time? You know, where do you really have time to fit that in or fit this other thing in? How do you afford to do all of what you want to do and still raise a family and have a nice house and all that? They ask me these questions over and over and over again. And I'm more than happy every time to answer them, right? So when I do answer people, it's funny because they really don't want to know, it seems like. Right? Or they're scared of the answer, maybe. But I usually get met with a really common cast of characters and responses, right? So it's either, yeah, well, I just don't have that kind of time in my day. I kind of look around a little bit and I'm like, what? We all have 24 hours? Or, I don't have the motivation that you have, Steve. What? Motivation? I don't have no motivation. There is nothing that motivates my butt to get up out of bed at 4 o'clock. Except for knowing that I did it yesterday. There's not enough hours in the day. Once again, we all have the same 24 hours. You know, or they'll say something like, yeah, I just don't make enough money at work. I need a new job. You know, I can't get by with what I'm living on. It doesn't afford me enough. And I look at them and I'm like, you know what? You don't have any kids and you're making $150 an hour, right? You make enough money. So it's just blah, 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 blah. Excuse after excuse. So that sounds pretty harsh. And you might be thinking, you know what? I've used some of those excuses. Well, let me tell you, I did too, right? But let me also tell you that if you're utilizing any one of these excuses today, you don't have a lack of time. You don't have a lack of motivation. You don't have a lack of hours, money, a decent job, or anything else. What you're really lacking is just simple systems and the discipline to work through those systems. So what's up, leaders? This is Steve Baumgartner, the Fire Forged Leader. I just want to welcome you back to real talk about the lessons learned in the forge and front lines of leadership. So once again, before I get started, you know, we're sitting here again. It's just you and me. I'm sitting here at my PC with my microphone in front of me. And you might be driving, you might be working, you might be at the gym exercising, or whatever you do, right? Out in the workshop. But whatever you're doing, I'm just going to ask you once again here today, if you're finding value with this podcast, think for a minute, at least one other person, it could be many more, that you know that might also benefit from this episode or any previous episode. And what I want you to do is I want you to just pause this thing right now and go out and share it with them. Share this podcast or share a certain episode with them. I guarantee you, if you're thinking about someone right now, they could benefit from hearing it. So getting back on topic here, there's this little author named James Clear. Wrote a book called Atomic Habits. It's on my top 3. Anyways, he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. Rather, you fall to the level of your systems. It's amazing how much truth is really packed into that little statement. So when you're listening to this episode, it's going to be March, right? Just 3 short months away from the beginning of the year. You know that time of year when everybody makes those New Year's resolutions. They want to lose 20 pounds this year. They want to spend more time with their family. They want to get all their bills paid off, whatever the case may be. Well, let me tell you, for the people who go to the gym, right now and next month are the best times in the year for people who go to the gym. And the reason why I say that is that all the people who started these big quests about losing 20 pounds or going to the gym every day, they ran out of the motivation to do it, right? They gave up on themselves. They gave up on their New Year's goals. But once again, I say it's bullshit, right? They didn't lack the motivation to keep on coming. They're lacking the systems to complete the goals that they set out to achieve. So that's probably been about the 3rd or 4th time that I mentioned the word systems. So let's define that a little bit. A system, if you look it up in the dictionary, is a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done, or an organized framework or method. I really couldn't have said that better myself, right? I really like how they talk about procedures and organized framework or method. And that's really the definition that I want to get across with systems. So I want to just briefly talk about a few systems that I have in place. And you know, a lot of people who sell planners and everything say you can do everything in one planner or one system or what have you. That's not necessarily the case. So when I'm going through these, I identify them as different systems because they all have different outcomes. So the way that I get there fits into a different system. Now, I do have one system that organizes the rest of the systems, but I'm not going to go into that in this show. So the first one, I'm going to break out into my morning routine, right? I exercise right every morning. I have a single prayer. I take a shower. I do all my personal hygiene. My wife and I come together and we do some gospel readings and do a little bit of couple prayer time in the morning. And then I drive to work. The interesting thing is that I get all of this done every morning before 6 a.m. So the couple points to pull out of that is like the gospel reading with my wife. She knows every day where I'm going to be at 5:30 a.m. And that's going to be sitting in the chair, looking at her on the couch so that we can start praying. Every day, 5:30, it's our morning routine ritual. She knows exactly when I get in the shower. She knows exactly when I get out of the shower. That's a system, right? It just completes itself every day. So I plan my work day, and I really look at that in 3 different buckets. There's yesterday. I need to look at what happened yesterday so that I can improve today and tomorrow. I need to look at what's coming at me today, right? What meetings do I have? What tasks do I need to get done? And then the tomorrow exercises, which are my next up items. I also do somewhat of the same system or routine in the evening, but it's not as regimented for the evening. Because I also have 3 little ones in the house and a wife who I also have to coordinate with. So if I was to plan that entire evening, I probably wouldn't get the time to spend with them. So that is booked in there as well. And then, of course, you have bill paying, right? If you don't manage your money and pay bills correctly and have that in a system, things slip through the cracks. And there's a few other systems that I use that are just kind of one-off sort of things. But really the point that I'm trying to get in all that is that my entire life is a system, and that's how I am able to do all the rest of that stuff. That's how I'm able to raise children, have a successful marriage, have a successful career, how I'm able to run a podcast, write a book, exercise, lose weight. It doesn't matter. So here's another interesting thing, is that you look at almost anything that is being sold today in the self-improvement space, and it's a system, right? So it could be something nutrition related, right? There's a book called Whole30. It's a system on how to eat healthy. People are selling systems on how to lose 10 pounds in 30 days, or this is the best workout plan in the United States going, or in the world, right? People sell planners. Hell, even Dave Ramsey is doing nothing but selling you his systems. All right? Now, here's the secret. I'm going to be one of those guys selling systems as well. I have a few in the pipeline that I'm working on right now. So this is kind of cutting my own throat, but I'm going to tell you, you don't need any of them. This isn't rocket science. You don't need someone else's system. What you need is you need something that works for you. You can build these systems on your own. My systems are nothing but notepads and pens. What you do need to know, though, is what you really desire. My internal dialogue right now is telling me not to say vision again. Don't say it. You can do it. Just go ahead and stay with systems. Don't get off on vision. Okay. Back to the real world. You need to understand what you desire. And then simply, all you have to do is reverse engineer what you desire. All right? So for example, I want to go back to my work example. At 9:30 every morning, I have a call that is hosted by my boss, who's a vice president, along with all of my peers in the organization. My simplest desire in all this is I want to appear competent to both my boss as well as my peers. And I also want to have any of the answers to the questions that might be asked of me about the performance of the plant from the day before. And then additionally, I also desire to learn from the past so that it can help me and my plant get better. So what does this look like? Well, first I have a standard grid format, and I simply just draw that out on a notepad every day. And it's really 3 columns. One is the titles for each section. The next column over is for the day. And then the last column is week to date. And then I put our volumes, I put our performance, I put our efficiency, I put, all these different metrics in it. And it's probably 15 items long. But it's the same table day after day. I can write it out of my head because it's that much of a system. And it doesn't take me long to gather the information either because I know everywhere to go and grab it. So the cool thing about this is if we get asked for a new item to be reported out on, I simply just add it. If we get asked to not report on something, I just take it off the table. But I look at my peers and I can tell that there's others that have similar systems, because when they do their report out, it's almost robotic, right? They walk right down through the same things the same way day after day. I do the same thing. And then there's others that you can tell that they don't have a script, because they talk about a lot of different things, and a lot of times they miss the metrics that we're supposed to be reporting on. And nothing against them, they just have different systems than I do. So when I'm populating that, what it does, since I got it down to such a system, and I've done it in practice so many times, I understand mostly what the questions that are going to be asked. So I can simply put a note script at the bottom to where I can quickly pull up those answers, when I get asked in the meeting. So why was I 5% down in this category yesterday? I got the answer sitting right there. But then I also look for things that we could have improved on from the day before, right? They might be process variations, or we took a little dip here, or we didn't quite do as well as what I thought we should in a different area. And I write those down at the bottom as well, because they can later become action items. So the next thing that I do in my day, and I do that first part in the first 15 minutes of the day, but the next part is I have a ton of meetings every day, right? I have to organize my meetings. I have to decide which ones I go to, which ones I'm going to delegate to someone else. But my basic desire around these meetings isn't to go to meetings, but it's to not miss important information. And I also want to understand my day, not so much where the meetings, it is where the meetings are located at, but it's not about the meetings. It's about the gaps in between, so that I can actually see how much work I can get done in those gaps. So when I'm writing out my meetings, it's really simple. I draw an empty triangle. To the right of that, I write down the time of the meeting, like 9 a.m., and the meeting length, 30 minutes, and the title, staff meeting. And that's all I do, is I put the time, the length of the meeting, and the title next to an empty triangle. And then I go on to the next line and I put the next meeting, and so on and so forth. So I'll get a little bit of a list of meetings on my page with these empty triangles. As I'm completing each meeting, I simply just fill in that triangle, so that as I'm walking through my day, I know exactly where in the day I'm at with my meetings and what the next one that is coming at me is. And this is in the notebook that I carry all day, every day. It's also in the same notebook that I put my previous day in, all of those metrics that I just went through, so that I always have it at my disposal. I can talk to people. I can follow up on those items I think that we could have done better. I can talk through things. And then finally, underneath my schedule, I put down 2 sections of about 4 to 5 items each. The first section is non-negotiables. The second section is next up items. And that's my today and tomorrow categories. So the non-negotiables, they're really things that I absolutely will get done before I check out for the day. If I don't get them done, I don't go home. It sounds pretty rough, but it's a lot of good motivation to get them done before lunch, right? And then, of course, you have the next up items. And these are things that I can work on when the non-negotiables are done. If you have an empty gas tank, you can't go any farther. So keep the gas tank full. So pull up those tomorrow items, and then you just get ahead. And then on both of those sections, I simply just check them off as they're done. I use a little X through a bullet point, but anyways, you could put a box, a check mark, whatever. The system is yours. So with bill paying, I have a time on my calendar that I do it every week. I have a place where the bills go. I have a spreadsheet that I track them on, put the confirmation numbers. Some of it is probably a little bit overboard, but I like making sure that my money is managed well. It's what keeps me at an excellent credit rating, and it also keeps money in the bank, right? So I want to just talk, those were just some examples. I want to give you about 6 bullet points now on steps to really having good systems in place. So the first one, and I mentioned it before, is you got to know what you desire, right? If you don't know what you desire, then you don't know where to go. So if you want to have money in the bank, if you want to pay down your debt, you got to understand what the end goal looks like, right? I want to pay down debt so that I have money in the bank. I can pay for a vacation for my family, all that sort of thing. If you don't want to be the laughing stock of your peers, you need to be ready for the meeting. The next step is find a system that works for you, not against you. I know plenty of people who seem to think that because the world is going digital, that means that they need to go digital as well. I'm a very digital person, but I tell you, when I write down the things I need to do today, it commits it to my memory. So I write it down on paper. If I type it, that doesn't happen. And I'm not saying your mind works like that, but mine certainly does. So I am not going to put everything in a digital format so that I can just forget it. So I use paper. Now, there's one group that I'm in, and we have a standard that we adhere to, that we all put our commitments into a digital checkbox system. And I do that, but I keep track of it on paper. And one of my to-do items at home and an alarm that I have set up is to go in there and fill out those digital checkboxes. That's all I use them for, because I'm upholding a standard, not because it's my system. Number 3 is modify whatever system you're using to be your own, right? Give it some time, of course, but if you find yourself struggling after a certain amount of time, or you find yourself doing things outside of your systems, just change it up a bit. Make it work for you. Just because someone built a planner doesn't mean it's your system. Your mind works differently than that author's. Number 4 is, for each outcome, you need to have one system. Now, it's all right if it's the same system, but you need to tie the system in with an outcome. For example, I can't use my daily meeting calendar to pay my bills. It just doesn't work. That's not the system that works. However, I can keep my calendar system and my non-negotiables in the same place and use that system because it makes sense to do so. 5, make your systems easy to accomplish. Okay? So James Clear also talks extensively in his book Atomic Habits about things that you desire, make them easier. Things that you don't want or you want to carve out of your life, make them more difficult. So if you want systems in your life, You need to make your systems easy. You need to make them desirable. So that notebook that I was telling you about at work, what I do every night before I leave work is I take that notebook and I put it on my keyboard. It's the first thing that I see after unlocking my door to my office and going to my computer, is that notebook sitting on my computer. I'm not going to go and check emails. I'm not going to do anything else because that notebook, I have to pick it up to move it anyways if I want to use the keyboard. So make your systems easy to accomplish. And then last but not least is don't cheat yourself, right? Put a system in place and then work the system. It's going to be boring. I'm not going to lie. It is boring as hell to work through my systems every day, all day long. But it's going to change your life. And the outcome is well worth every bit of boring that you have to encounter with your systems. So I know I got a little bit windy on those 6 things, so I'm going to run through them real quick again. Know what you desire. Find a system that works for you, not against you. Modify it to be your system. Use a system for each outcome. Look at the outcomes, tie it back to a system. Make those systems easy to accomplish. And then last but not least, don't cheat yourself out of these systems. All right. So, pretty heavy lesson today, all about systems. Droned on a little bit. Apologize for that. But, coming back to this podcast every week, clicking in just a little bit more and more, what you're doing is you're becoming the leader that we need out in your community. You're becoming the leader that your family deserves. You're becoming the leader that your spouse deserves. And most importantly, you're becoming the leader that you're meant to be. So let's go out there and lead with intent. So before I let you go today, once again, if you appreciated what you heard here today, I invite you to leave a rating and a review and smash that subscribe button right now on whatever podcasting app you're listening to. Come back next week and join me in the Forge. We're going to have a lot of great episodes. We continue to have them. I got a couple new people booked. Victoria King will be on this month yet. Tony Ojeda, the author of Made to Thrive, and a coach, mentor, will be on shortly. I have another life coach that's scheduled right now. And then I have a whole bunch of people that I'm talking to in the background to bring on as guests. I took a little bit of a hiatus away from guests for a little while as I worked on a few other things, but we're strong back at it now. So once again, I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and go out there and lead with intent.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the Forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the Forge, shape your thoughts